Okay, here's a bit of a change. Alright, I'm gonna overtake this truck. Watch me. Come on! Go on! You can do it, bike! You! Get up! Get up the hill! U-turn. That's one thing it's got going for it. You can pull a U-turn that's fucking tight as a nun's clacker. Howdy folks. I'm on another bike today, yet again. So this is the G310GS. There we go. This BMW model is being a mouthful as always. So this is, I think there was two of these. There was a GS and an R that were sort of released, I think it was last year, and marketed at a particular price point and a particular clientele. I'll give you my initial impressions of it, and then I'll give proper impressions after I've sort of been riding it around for a couple of days. I've had it out on the motorway and dual carriageway and all that so far, and it is not a motorway bike. Well, not for me anyway. I'm a big lad, and I was kind of able to get it up to about 105 kilometers per hour with a tailwind. So that's, you know, not the top speed of the bike if you really choke the life out of it, but that's about it. So you're not sitting at motorway speeds long term, and maybe not at all if you're a big lad. Go on! Come on! Fucking yes! 104! Come on! Come on, no! Yes! 108! Okay, that's all the motorway I'm going to be putting on this video. I'm not going to insult anyone's intelligence by claiming that's a motorway e-bike, or one that you should get if you plan on being on a lot of it. It is, however, just the initial sort of riding experience. A nice nimble little bike, like it's easy to throw around, and the riding position is forgiving. It's a sit-up and bag position. It's like, I've had a R1200GS before, and it's very much like the seating position on that. Other impressions, I guess, compared to the, and I'd be careful about comparing it to the other GSs, maybe to the 750GS, which I have another video on. And to compare this to what I remember of the 750GS in terms of acceleration and braking and all that, it's like the 750GS except less. You know, there's less acceleration, there's enough to get you out of sort of low speed scrapes and stuff like that, but there's also less braking, and it's one thing I definitely noticed. The brakes aren't, I don't know what kind of brakes are on it, but I've had a couple of moments. Now I'm coming off a 1200 RS where the brakes are excellent, so it could be that the brakes are fine for this sort of caliber of bike. Oh Jesus, oh stop. The brakes aren't as good. The other thing I noticed straight away is it's a no frills bike, certainly. You know, the build quality seems to be, you know, okay. Obviously it's BMW, they're not going to put up with making shitty bikes that fall to bits. There's no real messing about with the dashboard, and I'll get on to the dashboard in a minute. There's one button here for ABS, which I assume is turning ABS on and off. There's no heated grips. I feel like heated grips is almost a standard thing on BMW bikes these days, but not this one, and that's easily fixed. And that's just it. I mean, I don't know what the suspension is like in terms of bells and whistles for the suspension, but yeah, I mean, it rides fine to me, but then again, I haven't really paced it. The other thing I noticed right away is the dash, and it's quite different from the F series dash, which I rode the F750GS. A lot of the other dashes, including the R1200GS, unless you have the TFT model, have like a big dial and then a small little LCD screen. And so this is just an LCD screen, there's no dial on it, which is good because I find dials fucking impossible to read. And there doesn't appear to be much messing with it. I mean, there's one button there which probably cycles between different information. And so right now, and I haven't messed with the dash since turning it on, it's got like range, speed, your rev counter along the bottom, your fuel counter along the side, the clock and your gear indicator, and that's it. And that's kind of really all you want. Like, I've never felt the need to sort of glance down at anything else. You've got big old speedo in digital form, and that's it. So good dash. I mean, I hope that this, or something like it, is the dash on newer F models. I think I rode the F750GS last year, so maybe they have or they haven't updated it, or maybe they'll update it in the future. All this fucking analog dials thing is kind of going the way of the dinosaur. And so the thing I have to give out about on the dash is the little lights to the left here. There's like a indicator light and a fuel light and a neutral light, and they're not great to see. I mean, they're not very bright, so you don't know when it's you don't sort of know when they're on. So I've already had a couple of instances where I left the indicator on a little longer than I meant to. I know I shouldn't need an indicator light to tell me when my indicators are on, but there you go. It's a decent backup for if you're brain fart and don't really don't pop it. And also, and this goes back to the sort of budget nature of the bike, is that the indicator light is just a single indicator light. And I thought, you know, bike manufacturers had stopped doing that. I thought that was gone. Even though it's a budget bike, like, the difference in manufacturing costs between doing a single indicator light and a dual indicator light is pennies. Like, it's nothing. Like, and I know you shouldn't rely on them and it shouldn't be a thing, but it just, you know, I feel like they're doing it not because it's a cheap bike so it needs to be cheaper to make, but they're doing it because it's a cheap bike so you need to know it's a cheap bike. You know, it needs to not have features intentionally so that you know you cheap the fuck out. And so that's really what this feels like. I know it's only a tiny small thing, but it, you know, it's the intention behind it when you think about it. These are the things I think about. Get into fucking gear. Don't fucking start doing that on me. Not going into gear when I kick the life out of you. You beeping it. Oh, it's not me. I'm off the hook. Oh, there's the lads. French. Tell you where they're from. They're straight off the boat, up the road there. Trying to figure out where they are now. Alright, there we are. BMW G310GS. Actually has the GS beak on the front and a tiny little screen, a bit like the F650GS. It's got a little bash plate there. Single cylinder engine. I don't know what the CCs are in it, but it's not large. Just tube frame construction, big shocking rack on the back of it for your top box. And so it's got knobbly-ish tyres. I really like the can, the look of the can on it. It's like a matte black sort of a can with a shield on the outside of it, and overall it looks pretty nice. It's got a couple of little GS touches, like the brake lever is the sort of like the one off the GSA, the sort of rugged, just metal one. The wheels are pretty nice. They have that sort of 5-spoke thing going on. So That's pretty good. It doesn't have the Brembo brakes, and that kind of shows. I'm sure Brembo aren't like unequivocally the best brakes, but the brakes are clearly not as good as other BMWs that I've ridden. And so seating position wise, it's actually quite a tall bike. Like it's I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's taller than the 1200 GS, ever so slightly, but again, you could probably look up the specs. It's comparable in tallness to the GS. Wing mirrors are decent, they're like on the GS themselves. You know, standard control setup, that kind of thing. It doesn't look like a cheap bike. That's the fucking thing I can't get over. Like, is that a lot of the fixtures and fittings, like the indicators aren't the same as on other bikes, but I mean they're fine. The rear pegs look a little bit sort of cheapish, but just in terms of the fitment of it, like you're comparing this bike to like the GZ250 Marauder or the 250 Ninja or other bikes in that sort of category. Like, this bike is $7,000, like in Ireland, which is like not an expensive bike. Like, if you go for the R version, the G310R, it actually goes down to $6,000, like 6,100 or something like that. That's not a lot of money for a fairly nicely fitted bike. And also, as mentioned in previous videos, the BMW service, which in Ireland is actually worth quite a bit. BMW are going to fucking fix this bike and fix it properly if it breaks, you know, even though you bought a $6,000 or $7,000 bike. In Ireland, if you buy a fucking, you know, a Hornet or a Bandit or something off of a dealer, like, and you come back to them with something wrong with it after a year or two, they're going to tell you to fuck off for the most part. Like, it's not something they want to know about, whereas BMW are just second to none when it comes to the after sales service. So in this category, if you were looking at sort of your first new bike, this is one that is not to be sneezed at in the learner legal category. You know, it's priced a little bit above its competitors, but you really do get what you pay for. Like, as far as I can see so far, I'm happy enough riding around in town in it, and I'm used to a much bigger bike. The fixtures and fittings are, you know, not cheap looking. It's not a horrible looking bike. It's actually turned a few heads. Like, for people who don't know what it is, they'll just sort of look at it and go, "Oh, that's actually not a terrible looking bike." So yeah. So yeah, all in all, overall impressions are: I miss my bike. I miss my own bike. I want it back. But if I was stuck on this thing, you know, there's worse bikes in this category to be stuck on, honestly. It looks well for a bike. That's the thing. In fairness to BMW, even though, as I said, there's a couple of touches that are like, this is clearly a cheap bike, it looks well. Like, it looks like a decent enough bike. It's not a horrible plasticky looking piece of shit like a lot of the other bikes in this sort of category are. You know, even though it's a budget bike, BMW aren't going to put out nonsense, right? You know, I sound like a horrible BMW shill, but there you go. Like, I mean, they're known for their build quality and their after sales and everything like that, and you're only really going to be finding new ones of these. This only came out last year, as far as I can tell. I can see a bunch of these appearing on the market in 3 or 4 years' time, when people who buy them are getting sick of them and moving on up, or, you know, just normal how the market works. I think it was actually marketed at markets where small bikes are still kind of the norm, like India and Southeast Asia and places like that, where there's a lot of small bikes knocking around and people don't really buy the bigger bikes. I think there's a spot for it in the market here, and increasingly in the last little while, when you've got people who are getting onto bikes and want to learn a legal bike and want a good new learner legal bike. A lot of people would consider it sort of a waste of money to buy a new bike that you're going to upgrade in a couple of years, or that isn't a big bike, but I don't think it is. If you want the peace of mind of a newish bike, and the dealer comeback, which with BMW is pretty good, and you know, knowing that nobody else has had it, that's a lot of what people who buy new bikes and cars and are able to buy new bikes and cars want, is that, like, only I've driven this bike, and there's you know, that's not nothing. That's something to think about. But it seems sturdy enough, and it just seems like a more solid, more less cheap and nasty kind of bike. So there you go.